Every healer failed the cursed king. A forgotten Omega's kiss freed him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to Lyanna Thornveil. Midnight pressed against the obsidian walls of the king's tower like a living thing, thick and heavy, breathing in slow, cold pulses. Even from the lower levels of Nightfall Castle, Lyanna could feel the curse shifting overhead, a low rumble that vibrated through the stone floors and crawled beneath her skin. She had spent years in these halls as an invisible Omega, the kind used to fetch herbs, scrub floors, and carry crates twice her weight because no one cared enough to notice she staggered under them. Forgotten, that was the word they used. Forgotten, as if she had never belonged anywhere at all. Tonight, however, even the servants kept their distance from her. They had watched every healer, priestess, and mage, over 60 in total, walk into the king's tower and fail. Some had walked back out trembling, eyes empty. Some had been carried. A few had simply never returned. Lyanna had not been chosen to help. Of course she hadn't. A forgotten Omega was decoration, not a healer. She had no wolf fury, no shimmering aura, no sacred gift. Just quiet hands and a heartbeat that too often flinched when people raised their voices. And yet here she was, climbing the narrow spiral staircase toward the room no one dared enter. Her fingers clutched the tiny vial she had brewed herself, the one no one bothered to check because no one believed she was capable of anything useful. Her pulse hammered hard enough to make her vision blur. Every step creaked under her boots. Every breath tasted like cold ash. They had warned her not to come, told her she'd last maybe 10 seconds before the curse peeled the skin from her bones. But she'd seen King Aerith Blackbane from afar, once, 3 years ago, before the shadow curse twisted him into a monster the kingdom feared. He had looked tired then, burdened, but kind. A king who stood alone in a world that demanded he never falter. Maybe that was why she kept climbing. Or maybe she was just tired of being forgotten. The air grew colder the higher she went, dropping fast enough to frost the metal railing. At the top, the final door loomed, reinforced steel etched with runes that pulsed like dying embers. The guards who were always posted here were gone tonight. Good. That meant fewer eyes to drag her away before she could try. Lyanna pressed her palm to the metal. It burned like dry ice, but shifted, recognizing something in her touch that she herself didn't understand. The door unlocked with a sigh that sounded too human. Inside, darkness swirled in thick waves, slamming against the far walls like a storm trapped in a bottle. Her breath fogged instantly. Her boots stuck for a moment on the frost-coated floor. And there, at the center of the chaos, knelt the king. King Aerith's massive frame was bowed, not in defeat, but in violent effort. He fought the curse with every breath. His skin glowed faintly blue beneath streaks of shadow that crawled over him like vines searching for a throat to strangle. His hands were bound by iron cuffs, not to restrain him, but to keep the curse from ripping him apart. Lyanna had expected a monster. Instead, she found a man trying desperately not to become one. "Why are you here?" His voice scraped against the cold like metal dragged across stone. He didn't look at her. Didn't need to. The curse saw her before he did. The darkness recoiled at first as if surprised. Then it lunged. A gust of shadow hit her chest, shoving her into the wall hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Her vial skittered across the icy floor. Lyanna gasped, doubling over, vision spotted white. Aerith's head snapped up. His eyes, silver like moonlit steel, flashed with something feral. "Get out," he growled, chains rattling as he fought to turn away from her. "The shadows will take you." She tried to move, but her legs shook uncontrollably. The curse pressed in, cold and heavy, whispering to her in a dozen voices. "Die. Leave. Break." She pushed off the wall, trembling but stubborn. I can help you," she managed, her voice cracking like thin ice. A laugh, low, humorless, edged in pain, escaped him. They all said that. The room shuddered. The curse lunged again, faster this time, tendrils slicing the air like living blades. Lyanna stumbled as it wrapped around her throat, cold as liquid nitrogen, tightening. She couldn't breathe. Her knees hit the floor. Her vision dimmed. And yet, through the panic, through the cold, she felt something else inside her ignite. A warmth. A spark. A pull toward him she couldn't explain. Her hand lifted toward him on instinct, fingers trembling, reaching as if drawn by a string tied to her bones. Aerith's breath hitched when he saw it. For the briefest heartbeat, the curse faltered. Then everything detonated in a burst of shadow and light. The explosion of shadow and light rolled through the tower like a shockwave, rattling the iron braces and sending frost dust cascading from the rafters. Lyanna felt the burst tear through her, cold first, then blistering hot, as if the curse itself had cracked open the air around them. When the brightness dimmed, she found herself sprawled on the icy floor, her palms stinging as if she had caught lightning with her bare hands. The darkness had recoiled toward the corners of the chamber, writhing like wounded smoke. For the first time since she entered the tower, she could hear King Aerith breathing clearly. Not the ragged, tortured gasps that echoed earlier, but a heavy, controlled pull of air. A sound that belonged to a man reclaiming himself. Lyanna pushed onto her elbows, still trembling. The curse had not disappeared, but it had retreated, leaving the air startlingly quiet. She dared lift her gaze. Aerith was no longer on his knees. Chains still bound his wrists, but he stood upright now, shoulders squared, as if remembering the weight of a crown he had not been able to carry for months. His eyes found her instantly. They glowed faintly, silver bright, but not with the wildness from before. More like recognition. More like shock. What did you do? His voice was deep but steadier than moments before. Lyanna opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She had no answer and no explanation for the warmth still flickering in her chest. The warmth that had surged the moment her fingers reached toward him. Aerith took a step forward, but the curse snapped like a chain tugged hard, sending shadows clawing up his back. He winced and stopped. Himself, gripping the cuffed iron until his knuckles blanched. "Stay back," he growled, but this time his voice trembled with something unfamiliar. Fear. Not fear of her. Fear for her. Lyanna struggled to stand, her legs shaking beneath her, but she refused to leave. Something about the way he stared at her, trying to shield her from his own suffering, forced her to take one small step forward. Another. And another. Every inch she crossed made the curse hiss louder, as if it recognized something in her that threatened its grip. "You should not be here," Aerith said through his teeth. "The curse destroys everything it touches." Lyanna swallowed hard. "It did not destroy me." He froze. The shadows rippled violently, reacting to her words. Aerith's expression shifted, a crack forming in the carefully held wall of restraint he forced around himself. "No one has ever walked this close to me without bleeding," he said. No healer lasted more than a minute. The cold wind circled her ankles, tugging at her cloak as if urging her to run, but Lyanna remained where she was. Her fear did not vanish, but it bent beneath something stronger. Something inside her that whispered, "Stay." Aerith's gaze dropped briefly to her hands. They still glowed faintly, a soft silver shimmer pulsing beneath her skin like a heartbeat. Lyanna clenched her fingers quickly, trying to hide it, but the damage was done. His voice dropped, low and stunned. "You're light. Only one kind of wolf carries that." She shook her head. "I do not have a wolf. I have nothing." Aerith's eyes flashed. "You are wrong." Before she could respond, the curse surged violently, slamming into Aerith hard enough to throw him against the stone pillar. His chains yanked taut with a metallic crack. Aerith roared, the sound shaking dust from the ceiling. Lyanna gasped, instinct propelling her forward even as common sense screamed for her to turn back. The shadows rose with him, swirling like a hurricane trying to drag him into its center. His knees buckled. His breath fractured. He was losing the fight again. Lyanna reached him in a single, desperate motion, her hands lifting without permission from her mind. The moment her palms touched his forearms, a second burst of light erupted. This time it was gentler, like a warm tide rolling outward from the point where her skin met his. Aerith's entire frame shuddered. His breathing steadied. The shadows hissed and retreated, clawing at the walls in frustration as if they had been denied their prey. His head dropped forward, silver eyes wide with disbelief. "Who are you?" he whispered. Lyanna opened her mouth, but she could only say the truth she believed. I am no one. Aerith shook his head slowly, eyes never leaving her face. No, he murmured, voice low and unwavering. You are something the curse fears. And in the heavy silence that followed, Lyanna realized the tower itself seemed to be holding its breath. For a long moment, neither Lyanna nor King Aerith moved, as if the entire tower hovered between one heartbeat and the next. The shadows pulsed around them like trapped storm clouds searching for a way back into his body, frustrated by her presence. Lyanna felt the cold bite of the curse at her ankles, but it no longer seemed able to take hold of her, slipping away from her skin the way oil slips from water. Aerith watched the phenomenon with a stunned, almost haunted expression, his breath visible in the frigid air. The curse retreats from you, he said quietly, the words heavy with disbelief. It has never retreated from anyone. Lyanna swallowed hard. Her heartbeat still thundered from the surge of light she had released without understanding how. She had never possessed power before. She had never asked for it. She had never even believed she was capable of anything more than stitching wounds and grinding herbs in the background where no one cared to look at her. And yet here she stood, face to face with the most feared king in the northern realms, holding back a curse no other healer had been able to dent. Aerith exhaled slowly, a long sound of exhaustion and awe mixed together as he braced one shoulder against the pillar to steady himself. His chains rattled faintly. Tell me your name, he said. Lyanna Thornveil, she whispered. Omega's servant of the Western Wing. His jaw tightened. You should not be a servant. She shook her head quickly. I should not be anything special. Aerith's gaze hardened, not with anger, but with conviction. You are. The shadows recoiled sharply at his words, as if refusing to hear them, and then surged upward like a furious wave. Aerith's muscles locked with terrible force, his body jerking as the curse tried to reclaim what she had interrupted. Lyanna gasped and rushed forward. The shadows roared, a violent, living sound that sliced through the air. The curse slammed into Aerith's chest, bending him backward until his spine arched painfully. His teeth clenched, a low groan torn from his throat. The chains fought to restrain him, glowing with strained magic. Lyanna reached him as his breath fractured into a harsh gasp. His eyes, half silver and half swallowed by black veins, flickered desperately toward her. Do not touch me, he rasped. The curse is angry. It will choke the life from you. She did not listen. Instead, she reached for him again, her hands trembling but steady, driven by that same instinctive force that had guided her since the moment the curse first tried to strike her down. The shadows struck at her immediately, swirling around her wrists and trying to tear her away. But the moment her palms touched his skin, the darkness recoiled violently, as if burned. Light rippled from Lyanna's hands once more, softer this time, like warm breath on frost. Aerith's body dropped forward, his forehead brushing her shoulder as he gasped for air, relief battling with agony in every breath. His chains loosened slightly, as if the metal itself recognized her. His voice was rough when he spoke again. Lyanna, what are you? She could only shake her head. I do not know. I never had a wolf. I never had a gift. I never had anything. His fingers curled weakly around her wrist, not to restrain, but to anchor himself. You have more than you believe, he whispered. She felt his exhaustion through the weight of his touch, but also something else beneath it, something ancient and instinctive that pulsed in the space between them. A pull, a hum, a recognition neither of them understood. Then, suddenly, a violent boom pounded through the tower, making the entire chamber shake. The torches lining the walls flickered out at once, plunging them into near darkness lit only by the dim glow of Lyanna's hands and the silver in Aerith's eyes. Footsteps thundered from below, dozens of armored boots racing up the stairwell. Aerith stiffened instantly. They are coming, he said, voice low and edged with dread. My counsel, my guards. Lyanna's breath caught. They will think I hurt you. Aerith's expression hardened, a cold, sharp thing meant for enemies. They will try to tear you away from me. The curse, sensing new tension, writhed along the ceiling like a coiled serpent preparing to strike again. Aerith met Lyanna's eyes with a fierce, urgent intensity. Stay close. No matter what happens, do not let them take you. And for the first time, Lyanna realized the king was not warning her for her safety alone. He was warning her because the curse feared her light, and if she left his side now, it might return stronger than before. The pounding footsteps grew louder, echoing up the spiral staircase like a drum, signaling the end of something fragile and the beginning of something far more dangerous. Lyanna felt the cold air tighten around her as King Aerith straightened with effort, his breath still uneven but no longer dragged down by the crushing weight of the curse. The shadows hissed above them, coiling close to the ceiling as if waiting for the moment she would be pulled away from him. Aerith's fingers tightened briefly around her wrist before he let go, the gesture quick but deliberate, as though he feared she might vanish if he held on too long or not long enough. The heavy iron door at the top of the stairs burst open, slamming against the stone wall with a force that sent a shock through the chamber. Dozens of armored guards poured in, their torches blazing, their weapons drawn. Behind them swept the king's high council, draped in dark cloaks adorned with silver crest marks that glinted like sharp teeth in the firelight. At the front of the group stood Lord Aerith Blackbane, the king's regent and most trusted advisor, his expression carved from cold marble. His sharp eyes swept the chamber, immediately locking onto Lyanna. Recognition flickered in his gaze, followed by outrage. "An Omega," he snapped, stepping forward. "In the cursed chamber. Who allowed this?" Several guards surged toward Lyanna instantly, hands outstretched as if she were a threat that needed to be extinguished. Aerith moved before thought, the chains rattling violently as he planted himself between her and the guards. His voice cracked like thunder against the stone. "Stop!" The guards froze, stunned. No one had heard Aerith speak with such force since the curse overtook him. Even the shadows trembled. Lord Aerith's eyes widened as he took in the king's posture. The steadiness of his stance, the clarity in his gaze. "Your Majesty," he breathed, almost unable to believe it. "You are standing." Aerith did not take his eyes off the guards. "None of you will touch her." Lord Aerith looked between the king and Lyanna, confusion deepening. "Your Majesty, she is an unregistered Omega. A servant. She has no clearance to be here. She may have triggered a violent reaction in the curse. She must be removed and interrogated." Aerith's chains strained as he stepped forward, placing himself even more firmly between Lyanna and the approaching guards. The shadows fanned out behind him like dark wings, responding to his anger. His voice dropped low, dangerous. "If any of you lay a hand on her, you will answer to me." Shock rippled through the entire room. Lyanna's heart slammed against her ribs. She had never been defended like that in her life. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to obey the regent or the king. Lord Aerith recovered first, masking his unease with authority. "Your Majesty, with respect, she is a risk. The curse reacts to those who enter without preparation. Every healer who came before failed." Aerith cut in sharply. Every healer failed, but she did not. Murmurs erupted among the council. Several heads snapped toward Lyanna, their disbelief quickly twisting into suspicion. "That is impossible," one advisor said. "The curse cannot be calmed." "Then explain why I am speaking clearly," Aerith said, his silver eyes flashing. "Explain why I am standing. Explain why the curse recoils from her." He gestured sharply toward the shadows, and as if obeying his command, the darkness peeled back several feet, revealing a clear circle of air around Lyanna. Gasps echoed across the chamber. Lord Aerith's face hardened. There must be another cause. No Omega has power. Aerith's jaw clenched. Then perhaps this one is not what she seems. Lyanna flinched, startled by the implication, but Aerith's next words softened the blow. Perhaps this one is something far rarer. Several guards bristled. One stepped forward, his voice sharp with accusation. "Your Majesty, she is manipulating you. Look at her. Frail. Untrained. She is using forbidden magic." The shadows around Aerith surged violently in response to the accusation, sweeping low across the floor like a living threat. The guard stumbled back, pale. Aerith's voice became ice. "If she were using forbidden magic, you would be dead." Silence fell. Lyanna felt the weight of every gaze shift toward her. Not with cruelty this time, but with fear. With awe. With something she did not have a name for. Aerith took one slow breath, steadying himself before he spoke again. "No one will remove her from this chamber. No one will question her without my command." Lord Aerith swallowed hard. "Then what do you intend to do with her?" Aerith turned slightly, enough for Lyanna to see the fierce determination burning behind his exhaustion. I intend, he said, to keep her where the curse cannot reach me without breaking. And the shadows behind him writhed in furious silence, as if they understood exactly what that meant. The chamber held its breath as the council and guards exchanged uneasy glances, none daring to challenge King Aerith again after witnessing how the shadows themselves reacted to his fury. Lyanna stood behind him, still trembling from the force of the curse, and from the sheer disbelief that the king had just defended her against his entire court. The icy air stung her lungs, but her heartbeat would not slow. For the first time in her life, someone powerful had stood before her, not to use her or dismiss her, but to shield her. The guards slowly lowered their weapons, uncertainty thick in the air. Lord Kaelric stepped forward cautiously, hands folded behind his back, his every movement composed yet vibrating with tension. Your Majesty, the council requests further explanation, he said. How did this Omega enter the cursed chamber? And what evidence do we have that she is not worsening your condition? Aerith's eyes narrowed, metal chains clinking as he shifted his weight. If her presence worsened my condition, I would not be standing. Kaelric's jaw flexed, but he forced himself to maintain composure. Even so, Your Majesty, we must be cautious. The curse manipulates. It distorts reality. We cannot take risks with your life or the stability of the kingdom. The shadows overhead twisted in agitation, reacting to the tension in his voice. Lyanna's skin crawled. She could feel the curse listening, watching, waiting. Aerith took one step back, placing himself fully between Lyanna and the council. His voice was low but carried the weight of command. The only risk here is if she is removed from my side. A ripple of shock moved among the advisors. One of the generals scoffed. She is a small, unmarked Omega. A servant. What possible use could she be to His Majesty? Aerith's gaze sliced toward him like a blade. She held the curse back. The general opened his mouth to argue, but Aerith lifted his arm, showing the dark cracks snaking across his skin, cracks which had been darker and more violent before Lyanna touched him. 2 hours ago, this curse tried to pull me apart. Now look. He extended his hand slightly toward Lyanna. The shadows recoiled instantly, retreating several inches. Gasps broke across the chamber. You saw that, Aerith said. The curse fears her more than it has feared any priest, mage, or healer. Lyanna swallowed hard, her fingers curling into her palms as dozens of eyes pinned her with a mixture of fear, suspicion, and awe. Lord Kaelric eyed her, as if she were a puzzle with pieces missing. If what His Majesty says is true, Kaelric murmured slowly, then her presence could destabilize or delay the curse's evolution, creating gaps we may not fully understand. Aerith's voice hardened. It is not destabilizing. It is reversing. The council erupted in frantic whispers. One healer clutched a pendant at his neck. Impossible. A curse like this cannot be reversed by an Omega. Lyanna shrank slightly under the weight of their disbelief, but Aerith turned his head just enough for her to see the faintest flicker of reassurance in his eyes. He spoke clearly, each word resonating through the chamber. She is not an ordinary Omega. Kaelric folded his arms. What are you suggesting, Your Majesty? Aerith did not look away from Lyanna as he answered. She may be the key to breaking the curse entirely. The room went still. Even the shadows froze, suspended in midair like ash caught in a sudden draft. Lyanna's breath caught in her throat. Your Majesty, Kaelric said carefully, if you truly believe she holds such power, then we must test her under controlled conditions. We must study her gift, identify its limits. Aerith's voice dropped to a low growl. She is not an experiment. Kaelric bowed his head slightly, though his eyes remained sharp. With all due respect, Your Majesty, if she is the key to restoring you, she now matters to the entire kingdom. Hiding her will only raise suspicion. Aerith's chains rattled as he shifted. I will not hide her, but I will not allow you to endanger her. The guards exchanged uncertain glances, torn between loyalty to their king and obedience to the regent's orders. Kaelric slowly exhaled. Then let her remain here tonight, while we prepare a procedure at dawn. Lyanna tensed, fear prickling her skin. Procedure. The word sounded too close to ritual, too close to sacrifice. Aerith sensed it instantly. No, he said. She stays with me. Kaelric's composure faltered. Your Majesty, The curse is still active. She cannot stay in the chamber overnight. Aerith looked down at Lyanna, his voice dropping to a tone meant only for her. Can you walk? She nodded, even though her legs felt like trembling branches. Aerith turned back to the council. Then we are leaving this tower together. No one will separate her from me. The shadows above them writhed angrily, as if understanding the challenge, but Aerith moved forward anyway, sweeping past the guards with Lyanna shielded at his side. And though the curse snarled like an unseen beast, it did not dare touch her. The descent from the cursed tower felt longer than the climb, every step echoing with tension as King Aerith guided Lyanna carefully down the narrow, spiraling stairs. His chains scraped against the stone, the faint metallic sound a reminder of how long he had been imprisoned by his own body. Lyanna stayed close at his side, her hands still tingling faintly with leftover warmth, the same warmth that had made the shadows retreat. The guards followed at a distance, uncertain and uneasy, whispering among themselves as though they were witnessing the impossible. The castle itself seemed to sense the shift in power. Torches flickered as they passed, reacting not to the usual cold burst of the curse, but to the unfamiliar pulse of energy surrounding Lyanna. Aerith noticed it too. His gaze flicked toward the lights, then toward her hands, but he said nothing. Instead, he allowed the silence to stretch as they walked until they reached the massive stone corridor that branched into the deeper halls of Nightfall Castle. Lord Kael'ric hurried ahead, intercepting their path. "Your Majesty," he said, voice taut with formality, "I must insist we take the Omega to the eastern wing. The healer's ward is prepared to hold her for observation." Aerith's expression sharpened instantly. "She is not being held anywhere." Kael'ric kept his tone calm but firm. "We cannot treat her like an ordinary servant. The kingdom will demand answers the moment they learn you are walking freely. We need control, structure, proof." Coming to a halt, Aerith stepped forward until he stood inches from his regent. Even with chains on his wrists, he radiated authority that made every guard stiffen. "I will give the kingdom proof when the curse is broken," he said. "Until then, she stays with me." Kael'ric lowered his voice, glancing warily at Lyanna. "Your Majesty, the curse's behavior changed rapidly tonight. We do not yet know why. If she is the source of this shift, she could be a risk." Lyanna's breath caught, her heart hammered. Aerith moved again, shielding her as though instinct guided him. "She is not a risk," he said. "She is the first hope this kingdom has had in months." One of the guards stepped forward, uncertainty tightening his grip on the hilt of his sword. "But, Your Majesty, the people fear the curse. If they see her with you, if they believe she triggered anything." Aerith cut him off. "They will see me standing. That is all they need to know." No one dared to answer. With a clipped motion, Aerith guided Lyanna past them, deeper into the castle. The corridor opened into a vast hall lined with wolf banners sewn in silver thread. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, washing the space in pale glow. But the moment Aerith crossed the threshold, the shadows still clinging to him stirred violently. Lyanna felt the shift before she saw it. The air tightened. The temperature dropped. The curse lunged downward from the high rafters like a falling blade. Aerith staggered, his hand slamming into the nearest pillar for support. "It is angry," he said through clenched teeth. "It knows I am weakening it." The shadows spiraled in a frenzy, trying to force him to his knees. Every guard backed away, gripping their weapons but terrified to interfere. Lyanna did not hesitate. She stepped in front of Aerith, placing herself between him and the violent surge of darkness. Instantly, warmth surged up her arms and burst outward. The curse shrieked in a soundless wave, recoiling from her as if burned. Aerith's breathing steadied almost at once. His chains glowed faintly as the tension in them eased. The guards watched with wide, horrified disbelief. Lyanna felt the light flow from her palms again, softer. This time, almost like a familiar pulse. Aerith lifted his head slowly. His gaze caught hers, unguarded and full of something raw. "Lyanna," he said quietly, "whatever you are, the curse cannot stand against you." Her chest tightened, emotion catching her breath. "I do not understand why it reacts to me." "You will," Aerith replied, straightening fully as the shadows retreated. "Because we are not done yet. And the curse knows it." Kael'ric stepped forward again, his face pale, his voice unsteady. "Your Majesty, this changes everything." Aerith exhaled deeply, his gaze never leaving Lyanna. "Yes," he said, "it does." And as they continued down the hall, the castle walls seemed to lean in, listening, waiting for the moment when fate would finally reveal what Lyanna truly was. The castle grew quieter the farther King Aerith led Lyanna from the cursed tower, yet the air remained heavy with tension, as if the walls themselves strained to make sense of what they had witnessed. Moonlight streamed through high-arched windows, casting long ribbons of silver across the stone floors, but even the gentle glow did little to ease the weight pressing on Lyanna's chest. She kept close to Aerith, not because she felt bold, but because every guard, advisor, and noble who glimpsed her along the way looked at her with the same mixture of fear and fascination, as though she were a spark that might ignite the entire kingdom. Aerith seemed to sense her unease. His chains clinked softly as he adjusted his pace, subtly positioning himself between her and anyone who came too near. When they reached the grand hall outside the royal wing, a group of council members rushed forward, clearly having been summoned by frantic reports from the tower. They bowed quickly, though their eyes flicked nervously between the king and Lyanna. One of them, Councilwoman Ellerin, stepped forward with a scroll clutched in her hand. "Your Majesty, word has already spread through the upper levels," she said, breathless. "The curse weakened. The shadows receded. We must send notice to the allied pacts. They will want to know the truth." Aerith's voice carried a quiet command. "They will know when I choose to speak." Ellerin hesitated. "And the Omega?" Aerith shifted slightly, his presence growing sharper. "Her name is Lyanna Thornveil." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Ellerin cleared her throat. "Very well. This Lyanna, what role does she play in your recovery? The kingdom will demand answers. They will demand proof she is not a danger." Lyanna stiffened, every muscle tensing as though bracing for impact. Aerith noticed immediately. "She is under my protection," he said, voice firm enough to silence the hall. "No one will question her without my permission." "But Your Majesty," another council member protested, "she is an Omega. Her presence beside you breaks every protocol we have in place. The public will not accept an untrained servant playing any part in royal matters." "Then the public will adapt," Aerith replied coldly, "because the truth is not theirs to rewrite." The hall went still. Lyanna felt her pulse race. She had spent her entire life being overlooked. Now the kingdom stared at her as though she were a loaded weapon. "Your Majesty," Ellerin continued carefully, "if she is to remain near you, we must understand what she is. Her gift is not natural, not of any known Omega rank." Aerith's eyes held a strange, unreadable emotion as he looked at Lyanna. "I agree," he said. "And the curse agrees also." The hall rustled with whispers. "We must test her power," Ellerin insisted. "Study it, dissect its properties, determine its limits." Lyanna inhaled sharply. The word dissect struck her like a knife. Aerith stepped forward, his voice sharp enough to cut ice. "You will not touch her." Ellerin flinched. "We meant no disrespect, Your Majesty. But knowledge is safety. If she is the answer, we must know how. If she is a threat, we must know sooner rather than later." Aerith's chains rattled as he moved closer to Lyanna, forming a silent barrier. "She is neither an answer nor a threat," he said. "She is a person." And then, softer, only for Lyanna to hear, "A person the curse cannot consume." Her breath hitched, emotion rising like a tide she could not hold back. She had never been spoken for like this, never been seen like this. Before anyone could respond, a violent pulse of cold shot through the hall. Torches flickered violently. Shadows clung to the ceiling in a frantic swirl. Aerith staggered, one hand gripping the wall. A strangled sound escaped him. Lyanna reacted instantly, stepping in front of him. The curse lunged, spiraling toward them with a furious, clawing motion. Light burst from Lyanna's chest before she could think, flowing down her arms and erupting outward. The curse recoiled in a violent snap, ripping itself backward across the hall and slamming into the far wall, shrieking soundlessly. Council members fell to their knees in terror. Aerith's breathing steadied at once, the cracks on his skin dimming. His eyes rose to meet hers, silver burning with awe and something deeper, something that made Lyanna's heart trip. "Lyanna," he whispered, as if saying her name anchored him to reality. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "I did not mean to do that. I do not know how." "You do not need to know," Aerith said, straightening slowly. You only need to stay with me. The shadows hissed, retreating like a wounded beast. And every person in the hall, from soldier to scholar, stared at Lyanna with dawning realization. Whatever she was, whatever power lived inside her, it had just chosen the king. The hall remained frozen in stunned silence, the air trembling with the aftershock of Lyanna's light as the curse slithered back into the corners like a wounded predator. Council members clung to pillars, guards gripped their weapons with trembling hands, and every living soul who had witnessed the explosion of power stared at Lyanna with dawning terror and awe. Lyanna felt her heartbeat thundering in her ears, her palms still warm from the burst of light she did not know how to control. She took a shaky breath, unsure if she should apologize, run, or collapse. Before she could speak, Aerith stepped forward, chains dragging softly across the stone floor. His gaze locked onto hers, steady and unflinching, as though she were the only grounding point in a world that had just shifted beneath his feet. Lyanna, he said quietly, do not be afraid. His voice carried such certainty that the air itself seemed to steady. But Lyanna shook her head, her voice breaking. I cannot control what is happening to me. I do not know what I am. You will, Aerith replied, and I will make sure no one forces you to discover it alone. Councilwoman Ellerin rose shakily, still clutching her scroll. Her voice trembled despite her attempt at composure. Your Majesty, we cannot ignore what just occurred. The curse reacted to her, as if she were a direct threat. Aerith turned toward her, his expression unreadable. She is a threat, he said, but only to the curse. Murmurs erupted across the hall. The words felt impossible, too grand, too dangerous. Lyanna's stomach twisted. She was not meant for attention. She was not meant for power. She was no one. A servant. A forgotten Omega. Lord Kael'ric stepped forward slowly, studying Lyanna with the same careful precision one might give a rare artifact or a dangerous blade. Your Majesty, he said, there is only one kind of Omega in the old texts who could wield light against darkness. The kind that vanished centuries ago. Lyanna felt her breath catch. Aerith's eyes narrowed. Speak plainly. Kael'ric hesitated before answering. A Lightbearer Omega. Gasps broke across the hall. Several guards stepped back instinctively from Lyanna, as though she might burn them simply by breathing. Lyanna's knees wavered. The word meant nothing to her, but everyone else reacted as if a legend had just stepped into their presence. She whispered, I do not know what that means. Kael'ric's gaze softened slightly. Lightbearer Omegas were believed to be born once every few centuries. Not warriors, but anchors. A balance to the shadows themselves. They were said to calm corrupted wolves, soothe broken minds, and drive out curses with the purity of their presence. Lyanna stared at him, horrified. I cannot be that. I am not strong. I am not brave. I am not anything special. Aerith's voice cut through her panic. You are exactly what you need to be. His tone was gentle but firm, carrying an assurance that made Lyanna's chest tighten. But the council erupted once more. Your Majesty, this is too dangerous. If she is a light bearer, every kingdom will want her. We cannot keep this a secret. We must isolate her at once for her own protection, or for the protection of the realm. At that last suggestion, Aerith's entire demeanor shifted. His eyes darkened, the shadows stirring behind him, reacting to his rage before he even spoke. You will not cage her, he said, voice deep enough to shake the walls. You will not isolate her. You will not treat her like an experiment. Lyanna felt her breath hitch as he moved closer, his presence radiating a heat that cut through the cold air. She stays with me, Aerith finished. Ellerin swallowed hard. Your Majesty, keeping her close may provoke the curse further. We must evaluate the risks. Aerith turned to Lyanna again, and for a moment the world narrowed to the silver light in his eyes. Lyanna, he said softly, look at me. She did. What happened just now, did it hurt you? She shook her head. No. It felt like something inside me was waking up. His voice dropped lower. And being near me does not harm you. No, she whispered. It is the only thing that feels right. The hall fell silent. The torches flickered. The curse hissed in the distant rafters, but weakly, as if recognizing defeat. Aerith lifted his head, addressing the room with iron in his voice. Then hear my decree. Lyanna Thornveil will remain by my side until this curse is broken. By royal command. She is under my protection and no one will lay a hand on her without my consent. The council bowed their heads reluctantly as guards exchanged uneasy glances. And in that charged moment, Lyanna realized the truth settling like a warm flame in her chest. The curse feared her. The king trusted her. And fate had chosen her for something she never believed possible. The hall slowly emptied after the king's decree, but the weight of everything that had happened lingered in the air like the fading echo of a storm. Guards whispered uneasily as they backed away. Council members bowed with forced obedience before retreating into the shadows of the corridor, and torchlight wavered against the stone walls as though unsure whether to brighten or dim in the presence of Lyanna's new truth. When the last footsteps faded, silence settled over the grand hall, broken only by the soft crackle of fire and the low rumble of the curse coiling in distant corners of the castle. Lyanna stood unervingly aware of how small she was beside the towering figure of King Aerith. Yet for the first time in her life, she did not feel like she was shrinking. She felt seen, even if she did not yet understand why fate had chosen her. Aerith exhaled slowly, the chains on his wrists rattling as the tension drained from him, replaced by something quieter and far more human. "Lyanna," he said, his voice gentler than she had ever heard it. "You have just been told you carry a power believed to be extinct, and you have heard every fear the council holds. Tell me honestly, how do you feel?" Lyanna lowered her gaze to her glowing palms, the light fading now to a soft pulse beneath her skin. "Afraid," she admitted quietly. "Not of my power, but of failing you." Aerith stepped closer. The shadows shifted at his back, but did not dare touch her. "You have done nothing but save me tonight," he said. "You have given me more hope than the kingdom has offered in months." She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "But I do not know how to control any of it. I do not know what comes next." Aerith's expression softened in a way that made her chest tighten. "Then we learn together," he said. "Whatever this curse is, whatever your power is, we will face it side by side." She dared lift her eyes to his. The silver in his gaze glowed faintly, reflecting the torchlight, and for a moment it felt as though the entire castle had gone still around them, watching, waiting. A cold gust of wind swept through the hall, carrying with it the faint shriek of the curse. The air tightened, and shadows twisted overhead in a last defiant surge, as if trying to reclaim what had been lost. Lyanna stiffened, but Aerith did not step back this time. He moved closer beside her, his shoulder brushing hers, and the shadows recoiled sharply at the contact, drawing back into the rafters like a wounded beast. Lyanna felt a warmth rise through her chest, steady and bright, a calm that spread through her limbs, as if the curse itself had no hold over her anymore. Aerith noticed it too. "It fears you," he said quietly. "It has feared you since the moment you walked into that chamber." "But why?" Lyanna whispered. "I was nobody." Aerith shook his head. "You were never nobody." Her breath caught in her throat as he continued. "The curse is ancient, older than this castle, older than my bloodline. It recognizes power older still, something it cannot consume." He paused then, studying her face as though he were memorizing the shape of her fear and her courage all at once. "You are not forgotten, Lyanna Thornveil," he said softly. "You are the light it could not kill." Her heart stumbled in her chest. The words felt too heavy, too meaningful, like a promise and a truth woven into one. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could answer, the curse surged one final time. A violent tremor shook the hall, torches guttered, and the shadows struck downward like falling smoke, wrapping around Aerith's shoulders in a wild, desperate attempt to drag him back into its grasp. Aerith staggered, breath shattering in his chest. Lyanna did not think. She moved. Her hands lifted, glowing bright enough to cut through the dark as she pressed her palms to his chest. Light erupted between them in a brilliant, blinding wave. The curse shrieked, recoiling so violently that the windows rattled in their frames. And then the hall was still. Aerith inhaled sharply, the darkness peeling away from him like ash scattered in the wind. His voice came out as a whisper meant only for her. "Lyanna," he said, "you freed me." Her eyes widened, tears stinging unexpectedly. "I did not mean, you did," he answered, certainty ringing through the words. "And whatever comes next, I will not let you face it alone." A warm glow spread from her fingertips, fading softly as Aerith reached out, and took her trembling hand in his. In the stillness of the extinguished curse, with moonlight pouring across the stone floor like a blessing, Lyanna felt the shift of fate settle around them like a silent vow. And as the last remnants of darkness dissolved into the air, one truth became clear. The forgotten Omega had become the king's light, and destiny had only just begun.